We're almost ready, just gotta send out the announcement. There we go, should be good to go. Gotta set up, gotta connect the WebSocket on TikTok so that I get all of the notifications in the right place. Let's make sure that is, okay, nice, it's connected. All right, let's answer some questions. Let's put that in the middle. Do I watch The Big Bang Theory? I did a long time ago when it was airing. I haven't watched it in a while. Sometimes I watch a random episode on the plane. Is it better to pursue a career in theoretical as opposed to experimental physics? Experimental physics will almost always have better job, you know, what's the word? Like, better job prospects, just because there's more funding there, right? That said, there's not a lot of jobs, period. So if quantum mechanics is true as far as we know, why does do you believe in God? I don't. Is The Big Bang Theory accurate? I mean, it's a sitcom about nerds, so it's not really like a physics thing. Who's better, LeBron or Michael Jordan? I don't know. How do you feel about the idea that the universe is eternal? I'm agnostic about it. It's hard to say. I don't think we have enough evidence. What's so important about trigonometric functions in the study of physics? Well, trigonometric functions are the simplest functions, arguably the simplest functions that are periodic, and periodic phenomena describe precisely those phenomena that like oscillate, and which means waves, and waves describe basically everything in physics. What's your opinion on the 3I Atlas comet? It's a comet. How do you feel about the Alcubierre drive? It's neat, but as far as we can tell, it's non-physical because it requires matter that has negative mass. Is the study of thermodynamics important in the science of the universe? Absolutely. It absolutely is. What are your views on time folding in on itself? I'm not familiar with it, but it sounds very suspect. So I don't know how seriously I would take any headlines that say that that's what's happening. What's your favorite type of math? Oh, my favorite kind of math is differential geometry. Is your wife a physicist too? She is not. Oh yeah, by the way, y'all, whether you're on TikTok, YouTube, wherever you are, make sure to like the live. Get more people in here, get more questions so that we can have some good education here. Is it Wednesday? No, it's Tuesday. We do this on Tuesday and Wednesday. Are we in a simulation? No, I suspect not. I think it's essentially impossible for us to simulate a universe, so I don't know why we would think that we could be in a simulated universe. What drew you to study physics? Black holes. It was black holes the whole time. Do you think it's possible consciousness isn't generated by the brain? I mean, it's like epistemically possible. I don't know if it's possible like logically or physically. What is the chance gravity overcomes dark energy? It really depends what dark energy does in the future. We just don't have enough information at this point. You started early? No, I actually started late. It's just I'm in Arizona, so we don't have daylight savings time. Can you please explain gravity? Yeah, so at the simplest level, gravity is a phenomenon that we observe where heavy things attract other things. That's it. That's the whole thing. Can you explain black hole jets? So there's a process called the Blanford-Znayak process, which basically it's fairly involved, but essentially as a result of a black hole having like spinning and having plasmas going around it, instabilities can cause magnetic fields to basically whip around the black hole and kind of be forced out the top, and the particles will follow that magnetic field line. It's Wednesday where I am. Fair enough. Oh, hey, thanks for the 100. Thanks for the 100. Wait, sent 100 for 2 joules. I don't know what that means, but thank you. Does zero exist? Well, in so much as any number exists, sure. Only science can explain all reality? I don't know if that's true. Why does gravity do that? Well, the questions of why generally assume like some sort of like reasons, but like I can give you mechanisms. So the mechanism of how this works, at least according to our best understanding, is that matter, mass, energy, etc., causes space-time to curve, and that curvature manifests as and that curvature produces motion that manifests as attraction. That's the mechanism. Now, whether there's like a why, that seems like it implies some sort of intention, and we don't know if that's the case, if there is such a thing. What do you think about the Riemann hypothesis? I don't think about it a lot. I heard Hawking say to Neil Tyson that if humans can harness dark energy and dark matter, dark energy, we could produce wormhole and other sci-fi such stuff. What are your thoughts on this? I don't know if Hawking ever talked to Neil Tyson. Maybe he did, but it is true that dark energy is kind of weird. Dark matter probably wouldn't do anything for us. I mean, at least not usefully. But dark energy, if we could somehow harness it, whatever that means, then maybe we could do some neat things. But dark energy, as far as we can tell, is not something that's harnessable. It's just kind of everywhere. You can't concentrate it or anything. Is string theory outdated? No. Yeah, joules are weird. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with joules. Can you give an example of how AI is used in the study of the universe? I am not familiar with any. Is there any way we could split space and time from each other? I don't even know if that question makes sense. How does gravity produce motion? Yeah, so you put matter in space-time, the space-time curves. Everything is moving through space-time. Now the question is are things moving through space or just time? Now, if you're sitting still, then you're just moving through time. But if the space-time curves, then moving through time could curve you into moving through space. And so you end up moving closer to something. Would you ever dive into the Navier-Stokes equations? And not for my personal research. I don't do like nonlinear PDE stuff. Well, I do, but just not that kind of nonlinear PDE stuff. Ever heard of tired light? Yeah, it's a pretty defunct hypothesis to explain the redshift. Are you a materialist? Kinda, not really. So is it space-time that gravity warps that we don't understand, or the gravity itself? We understand gravity pretty well. Matter causes space-time to warp. Warped space-time causes matter to move in different ways. What do you think of the theory that our universe exists within the black hole? I think it's false, and I think that one could actually even show that it's false, assuming general relativity is true. Why does matter curve spacetime? That might not be a question that has a reasonable answer. Like questions about why laws of physics are the way they are, they might not be questions that make sense. Lots of questions, by the way, so I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. What do you think about the case that an astronomically huge amount of black holes fill our observable universe and their effect gives us what we define as spacetime? It doesn't seem like a formalized thought, so I don't know how to evaluate it. Is there a vertical stream running concurrently? There is. There is. What do you think about the cosmological constant? I think it's probably not a constant. I think the cosmological constant is 0, and rather that there's some extra quantum field that has an energy level that we don't understand yet. That's my best guess. Do we know how to create anti-gravity like floating rooms? No. Where did you graduate from? That is private information. Does entropy apply to light? Yes, light has entropy. Do you believe we are in a simulation? No, and I think that one can even prove this by demonstrating that our universe is not simulatable. Does the expansion of the universe drive time forward? That's one thought that Stephen Hawking had 40 years ago. We don't really have a good understanding of what time is doing or what time is at this point, but that's one plausible or potential explanation. I shouldn't say plausible. If light moves at the speed of light, obviously, and doesn't age, then what is the meaning of distance from the perspective of a photon or anything moving at that speed, hypothetically? So light, in some sense, does age. Stuff can happen to light during its path from point A to point B. Light just doesn't experience proper time. It experiences, say, affine time. Light has a past, it has a future. These are all things that make sense to talk about for light. However, light doesn't experience proper distance either. There is no proper distance from a photon's perspective. The universe is two-dimensional. If photons had a perspective, which they don't. Is quantum entanglement made question if God exists? No, they seem unrelated. There's likely a chance that can be a simulation. Doesn't seem likely. 3i Atlas, it's a comet. What's your opinion on gravastars? They're neat. We don't have any evidence that they're like real descriptions of what black holes actually are, but they're neat. By the way, if you spam, I'm not going to answer your question. When you entered grad school for a PhD, did you have an idea of what you were going to do for research? Mildly. I entered wanting to do cosmology stuff. Then I kind of wanted to do string theory, black hole stuff. And then I ended up doing more like relativity stuff with applications to I ended up doing like geometry stuff with applications to relativity. So it all kind of stayed in the same ballpark. What do you think about the big crunch theory? It's at least on the table. I don't know, like the evidence is not at the point that it's the most compelling option right now. I don't think that we have enough evidence for that right now. Eternal inflation is true. Some people think so. Others seem to think otherwise. So It's hotly contested, if you will. Do we know more about dark matter or dark energy? We don't. Probably more about dark matter, because we know how it's distributed and things like that. How can we reverse entropy? All you have to do to reverse entropy is just take something like a cup of coffee and cool it down. That will reverse entropy. Still aiming for a tenure track? Yeah, I have an interview today. Not for tenure track, just for a postdoc. Why is the universe's expansion accelerating? Well, the name that we give for whatever the explanation ends up being is called dark energy. Please explain the hydrogen atom problem. I am unable to remember all the steps. You mean like the quantum hydrogen atom problem? So all you do is you first look for time-independent solutions to the Schrodinger equation. These are going to be the energy eigenstates of your atomic system. That is a partial differential equation that you have to solve. You can solve it in spherical coordinates using spherical harmonics, and so you break it up into a part that's just spherical harmonics and a part that has a radial dependence. Then you go from there. If I want to start learning physics, is there a book I can start with? Well, at a pop science level, absolutely. This is the book I always recommend. It's A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Make sure to grab a screen grab. It's a really good book. What are your thoughts on 3I Atlas? It's a comet. It's an interstellar comet, but it's a comet. Can strange matter be proven? Well, look, so we can already make particles that have strange quarks in them. The whole question about like whether strange matter is stable, we don't know. What do you mean two-dimensional from the perspective of a photon with 2 dimensions? Yeah, so from the perspective of a photon, there's no depth, if you will. There's no forward and back, because all of that's compressed into a single plane. So there's just side to side and up down. What do you think of Nikola Tesla? He was a brilliant inventor. One among many. PhD in the US, you can change subfields anytime. Yeah, basically. Well, so I hadn't found my advisor yet, so yes. If an eigenstate is like a pure note of a system, what happens to the geometry of spacetime itself when gravity changes the shape of the instrument? So you're asking what happens to the eigenstates of general relativity. So we don't usually think of solutions to the Einstein field equations as eigenstates because it's a nonlinear problem. It's not a wave equation. It's not a linear operator, so it doesn't really have eigenstates. So I'm not really sure what you mean by the question. How does stuff stop working on the quantum level when you look at it? It has nothing to do with looking at it or not looking at it. It's just merely that when you have a small thing, if nothing is affecting it, it'll just keep doing its small weird stuff on its own. But if something interacts with it, a big thing, it'll change how it behaves because you're interacting with it. Imagine like you were trying to observe like, I don't know, like a mosquito. And the way that you had to observe it was by chucking a baseball at it. Well, of course, hitting a mosquito with a baseball will change how the mosquito behaves. We have $6.66 from Nectu. Best of luck with your interview today. Answering questions for Ask a Physicist is good exercise. Yeah, it's exactly that. Thank you, Nectu. By the way, remember that Super Chats do get first dibs. Oh, and I should mention, there's a new feature that I've added to YouTube and Patreon. Namely, if you are a YouTube member, which is like $4 or $5 a month or something like this, or if you're a Patreon member at any tier, you can get access to my debate notes. These are basically notes that have arguments, resources, facts, debunks, things like this that I use for all of my debate stuff. So if you want that, that's an option for you. What's your interview for? It's for a postdoc in physics. Do you believe in reality shifting? No, that's not a real thing. Can you explain how light takes every path somewhere, please? That's just kind of one interpretation of what light is doing. The best way to think about it is that if you have a source that is spherical, like it emits light in all directions, and then you just have it emit one photon, then that photon kind of is spread out in a sphere until there is something that could potentially block it, and then the wave function collapses, and it either is blocked by that or it's not, and if it's not blocked, then it keeps going. And that area that it would be blocked by is kind of filtered out. Do you think dark energy possibly part of the same machinery responsible for gravity as well as dark matter? Yeah, so dark matter and dark energy are probably unrelated. However, dark energy is likely very closely related to the way that we understand gravity. Yeah. What was your favorite Czech food and drink? Well, my favorite Czech drink was kofola. My favorite Czech food is probably svíčková. Like, it's basic, but it's good. Have you debunked reality shifting before on your page? No, it's because it's all just a meme, right? If we understand gravity, why don't we know what causes it? We do. Matter causes gravity. How is gravity related to our understanding of time? So gravity is the curvature of space-time. That's like the current model that we use to understand gravity, and so that's going to change so gravity, in particular, affects how time behaves. In particular, it affects how, this understanding of gravity informs the way that we think about the universe as a whole, the way that we think about space-time as one joint object. Did you always know that you wanted a PhD? Yeah, since I was a kid. Is it true that a postdoc position in high energy is extremely hard to find and get into? Yes. Yes, it is. Please explain Wu's experiment. What is parity actually? I have a video on this from a while ago. I'd have to refresh my memory on it, but essentially what she did is she took a cobalt isotope, if I remember correctly, and then she just observed decay rates and correlated those decay rates with direction. And she found that the decay rates, depending on how the cobalt isotopes were aligned magnetically, so she put it in a magnetic field, depending on how the cobalt was aligned, there was a preferential direction for the decay. Had some delicious svíčková last week in Brno. That's where I used to live. Brno's great. Any postdoc is hard to get into in physics. True. How old are you? I'm 32. I don't mean to be rude, but yes, you have a PhD, but you're not Mr. Know-It-All. That's fact. I never said I was Mr. Know-It-All. Would love to work with you just getting into my PhD. Would love to do a research project before starting. Well, DM me if we have similar interests and we can think about something. Is a zombie star coming towards us? Not that I've heard. Moon affects wave tides. Does it affect anything else? Yeah, there are land tides. They're just really, really small, right? Are we in a black hole? I suspect not. No, I think probably not. Why is qualia often ignored? Would the brain knowing about it mean that it is somehow measurable? Qualia is like a philosophy and psychology and neuroscience thing. It's just not a physics thing. What's the most fundamental particle? There's not a most fundamental particle, but there are a lot of fundamental particles. There are quarks, there are leptons, there are gauge bosons. These are all particles that are, in some sense, fundamental. Can you explain strangeness? It's confusing. Yeah, so there are 6 types of quarks. There's up-down, which is what makes up basically everything in our bodies and the matter that we're familiar with. Then there's the strange quark and the charm quark. These are kind of a little bit heavier. And then there's the top and the bottom quark. Now, strangeness, before we knew that there were 6 quarks, the strange quark was the 3rd quark that was discovered. And essentially, particles with a strange quark in them were given this feature of strangeness because strangeness was conserved in particle reactions except via the weak nuclear force. The weak nuclear force could change out the strangeness of a particle. But if a particle has strangeness, it just means that there are strange quarks involved. What kind of physics do you have a background in? So it's relativity stuff. So think stuff about gravity, black holes, cosmology, that kind of stuff is what I do. Speaking of quarks, they cannot be separated out, and the simplest explanation is conservation of charge. Absolutely, that's true. But I've heard that the supervisor who is stuck with the grads is often the academic parent of them. Yeah, that's something true. That's a bit true. What is your opinion on Neil deGrasse Tyson's books? I've only read one, and it was like 10 years ago. It was Death by Black Hole, and I remember enjoying it. How is de Rham cohomology useful in general relativity? Well, look, so it pops up sometimes when you're trying to prove something like mathematically, but most of the time, well, okay, there's kind of 2 different things that you can do in general relativity. You can either do local stuff, in which case de Rham cohomology is irrelevant because that's a global thing, or you can do global stuff, in which case de Rham cohomology can be a useful tool for like establishing, relationships between topology and the existence of closed one forms and the relationship between exact one forms and all this stuff. So it can be useful. Is there anything beyond string theory that could give a reason to an evolutionary theory that would be something along the lines of flat Earth concepts moving? No. Do you have any fights with astrophysicists since they speak the exact opposite of what cosmologists say. I don't know what you mean, but no, I don't have any fights with astrophysicists. No. Is the idea of wormholes only popular and talked about because of movies? Maybe, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. How do you feel about physics research being less funded by government and more funded by small by the private sector? I think that's a terrible idea. Could you, in short, explain how Z-bosons work in the weak force? I understand W plus and minus bosons, but couldn't find much about Z-bosons. So Z-bosons basically behave like photons. That's basically what they are. They're like fat photons, in that they essentially apply a very weak force to things. Have you ever seen a conspiracy theory that you have been interested in researching further? I mean, not like the conspiracy theories that, not like the not real, so like COINTELPRO was like a real conspiracy theory that's like documented by the government and so on. Like that's a real thing, but like none of this like flat earth, moon landing denial stuff, no. It's all just like cringe pseudo-skepticism. What are some of your own hypotheses? Well, if I told you that, then I'd be out of a job, right? Is it hard to find a job in physics just in general? Yeah, generally. Can you explain theory of relativity? Okay, that's a lot of yeah, so general relativity is merely the idea that matter curves spacetime, and spacetime being curved tells matter how to move through it. Special relativity is merely the idea that light moves at the same rate for everybody, in all reference frames, all inertial reference frames, I should say. And there are a lot of consequences for this: time dilation, length contraction, relativity of simultaneity, and so on. What is the definition of gravity? Do you believe in Newton or Albert Einstein? So gravity, our best model for gravity, describes gravity as the curvature of spacetime being induced by matter with energy and momentum and so on. Is being mathematically consistent a good enough reason to pursue string theory? I think so, because we don't really have a whole lot of mathematically consistent theories of quantum gravity right now. And even if string theory is not a theory of quantum gravity in our universe, it's a theory of quantum gravity in like a logically possible universe, and it'll at least tell us something about how quantum gravity works. What are psi particles? So the J psi particle is a, what is the makeup? Is it a charm and is it a strange and a down or a charm and a down or something? I don't remember. It's a particle that was discovered in the 70s and it was a big deal. Why was the double slit experiment such a big deal? It really wasn't. Like, it's a good test of, like the quantum version is like a good test of quantum behavior, but it's like, it's really not. Are you reading from another chat? There are 3 chats that I'm reading from. So if I miss yours, it's because there's 2 other chats. Is everything made up of sound, vibration? No, almost nothing is. What is antimatter? Antimatter is like regular matter, except all of the charges are flipped. So if you think of electrons have negative charge. The antimatter version of an electron has positive charge. Oh. Ask an engineer. Oh, I've never been an engineer in my life. It proves photons only behave as expected when being observed. No, it doesn't really do that. Is a physics degree worth it? If you want to do a physics degree, then it's worth it. But if you're doing it for the money, then it's not worth it. What's the Feynman diagram behind me? That Feynman diagram, you can see it, that's electron-electron scattering. Do you think dark matter actually exists, or does it exist because we lack understanding of how matter actually moves? I think it probably exists, yeah. What's something that's you're super interested in your field? I'm really interested right now on various models of like cyclic cosmologies, just kind of investigating like what ways they can work, if they can work. What will be the physical application when we unify completely quantum and relativity? Nobody knows, because we don't know how it's going to be unified. I have to scroll down a lot. I've been so puzzled how a flame can't cast a shadow. It can. You just need a brighter light behind it. You need a dim flame and a bright light. What's your opinion on entropic gravity? So I haven't looked much into it, but from what I've read, people have, so from like, you know, I look on like Stack Exchange and stuff for people's opinions on it. And it seems like some people seem to think that it's been debunked because not all of the gravitational effects for non-homogeneous systems can be explained by their entropy in the entropic gravity model. How many dimensions do ocean waves travel in? Well, in some sense, I mean, like, there's the surface ocean waves. Those travel two-dimensionally. Any recommendations for books on cosmology? Well, if you want an intro book, this is a good one. Brief History of Time. Really good book. But if you're looking for like a textbook, not that I can think of off the top of my head. What do people mean by quantum physics isn't logical? What they mean is that they don't understand quantum physics. From Elijah Rowden, we have, I never really understood how light can act as both a particle and a wave. It kind of doesn't. Light acts as a wave always. It's just sometimes that wave is more localized than other times. In fact, everything is always a wave. Does singularity proof that we are all connected? Singularities probably don't exist. And if they did, it wouldn't have anything to do with us being connected. Is the slit experiment not just mind-boggling? Not really, not once you take an intro course in quantum mechanics. There's no way you can answer this question. What question? Just because we witness gravitational forces doesn't mean mass causes gravity. The best models that we have are that mass, or rather matter with mass or energy or momentum or whatever, causes the deformation of space-time, and that deformation of space-time is what we call gravity. So, I mean, like, if you have a better explanation, great, but what's the postdoc focusing on? I don't know yet. I mean, it's generally like high-energy particle physics, cosmology, quantum gravity, that kind of stuff. We'll see. That's why I'm doing an interview. Was the moon once part of the Earth? Sort of. The best explanation we currently have is that there was a proto-Earth, and then there was a smaller planet called Theia. Theia smacked into the proto-Earth. Some of it stuck around and was like pulled into a sphere, so we have like part of Theia in the combined with proto-Earth. But then some of it also got knocked out and formed the moon. Your thoughts on CCC that proposed? Yeah, I'm familiar with CCC. So the trouble with CCC is that it seems like they've made predictions that haven't come true. Also, there are some issues with particle decay, although apparently Penrose has resolved that and says, oh, as long as the particles are far enough away from each other, it's fine. I'm not so sure about that. CCC is very interesting, and I kind of wish it was right because it would make my PhD work so much more interesting, but it just doesn't seem true. Do you have your own published articles we could read? No, well, I do have published articles, but you can't read them because then that would mean that you can, find all of my, like where I live and all of this stuff, which I don't want you to be able to do. Grimlock sends $5. Good luck on your interview. Have you hydrated? No, but thank you, I will. I think there's huge chunks of Theia underneath Africa. I can't remember the specifics. Yeah, I heard about that too. Do you teach physics? What do you think we're doing right now? Ever heard of the amplitude-hedron model? Not only have I heard of it, one of the founders of it was on my PhD committee. He's a really nice guy. I don't know a lot about it. I've listened to a few talks. I don't really understand the mechanics, though. I'd have to read a lot more. It's very far from what I usually do. On Unapologetic, you said energy doesn't exist, if I understood correctly. Big if. Could you elaborate on this a little or correct me? Yeah, so the rough idea, thank you for the hat, Efon. The rough idea is that the way that we think about energy, there's kind of like the 1700s, 1800s version of energy, where it's just like this essence, this thing that causes change, right? But in the early 1900s, Emmy Noether basically figured out that energy is what happens when you have a system that, in a technical sense, kind of doesn't change with time. Like you can move it forward in time, move it backward in time, and it doesn't change, in some like technical sense. And so it turns out that unless that is true about a system, then the energy just isn't well defined, right? And so in general relativity, our universe doesn't satisfy that criterion, which would mean that energy is just, at least globally, there's no locally defined global notion of energy that we can even talk about. Now you can talk about energy on like a small scale, because on a small scale it does approximately meet that criteria, but just globally it's not the case. He's being very odd about his degree and published works. It's not odd with considering I get death threats. So no, it's not odd for me to want to protect my identity and my family's identity, right? That's not weird. If the moon was hit with an object large enough to split or destroy it, what would happen to Earth? Well, it depends, I guess, on what the fractured pieces of the moon would do. If they hit the Earth, then we'd have a bad time. If they didn't, then we'd be fine. We just would stop having strong tides. Could the eccentricity of the Earth be a significant driver of climate change in the future? Do you mean like the eccentricity of the Earth's orbit? Because the Earth's orbit is really not eccentric at all, really. It's like barely eccentric. Just a random question, can nothing exist? Like, not just a vacuum? Well, so the question about whether or not nothing exists, that's a question for philosophers. Can you explain how general relativity and quantum mechanics don't agree? So there's some like conceptual issues, namely like if quantum mechanics is true, then particles can be in more than one place at once, and then gravity would in some sense have to have like a superposition of gravitational fields kind of correlated with the location of the particles. However, on a more technical reason is we have an algorithm, basically, like a method or a technique that we use to try to convert classical theories like electromagnetism, like gravity, into quantum theories. It's called quantization or second quantization. And the method basically involves adding some number of terms until kind of like the recursion closes. And then you have a consistent theory. And then the terms that you added to your equations, those terms are then just fixed by experiment. The trouble is if you try to do this with gravity, with general relativity, what you find is that you have to add an infinite number of terms. And so you'd have to add an infinite number of terms, and so you'd have to run an infinite number of experiments to fix the coefficients of each of these terms. And it's just not possible. So we can't, so that algorithm fails when we try to apply it to general relativity. Now, maybe there's another way to do it. Some people suggest that loop quantum gravity is kind of like another way to solve this problem. Some people think that you need a whole new paradigm to solve it. There's a whole bunch of different ways, a whole bunch of different approaches. Which gravity, Newtonian or Einsteinian, because they're both bunk? We're talking about Einsteinian gravity, which is not bunk. It's like super well confirmed by experimental observation, or sorry, just observation. How can you measure the circumference of a planet or a star in space? It's really hard because our telescopes just have a very, very hard time resolving things that are that far away and that small. For planets like, Neptune, we can just point a telescope at it and measure how big it is, right? But like for exoplanets, for stars in distant parts of the galaxy, it's much, much harder. Right, we have a few super chats from Elijah. Not necessarily from a physics perspective, but what do you think is the greatest human achievement? The wheel, vaccine, etc. Maybe antibiotics. That's a pretty big one. From Miko Makopo. With the 5 British pounds. Thank you so much. Oh my days. It's very British of you. Dr. Blitz says energy doesn't exist. My other favorite scientist says time is an illusion. Too much as for me, I'm learning shorthand. Yeah, sorry. Do you like the episode of The West Wing? I haven't seen The West Wing. The electric grid is the greatest feat of human engineering. That's also pretty impressive. Energy doesn't exist. It's not well defined globally. So look, you can define energy locally. It's just not a globally well-defined notion that you can extend throughout the entire universe. And there isn't such a thing. When will you take physics questions through call again? I just get too many questions now to be able to do that. I don't know. Is there any point of doing Newtonian mechanics instead of Lagrangian Hamiltonian? Well, Lagrangian mechanics only works for, in some sense, conservative systems. Hamiltonian mechanics generally works in general. I mean, look, it's just 3 different ways of kind of doing the same thing. Judy Bassett, did I miss? I don't know why I can't. Judy Bassett just joined and became a member on the vertical stream. Maybe the horizontal stream, but welcome, Judy. And C-Bar sent 250 and then 250 more joules. That's 500 joules. Thank you. Now, Zoidberg asks with the $10 super chat. Thank you, by the way. Hi, Dr. Blitz. Let's say the sun suddenly vanishes. Does its gravitational well go out immediately, or that information needs time to travel to the planets and the Earth will stay in orbit for 8 minutes? The latter. You're on the money. The ripples will take the ripples of it going from a depression to not being a depression would take 8 minutes to travel. You're right. Sorry, scrolling down to the bottom. Why does the setting sun sometimes look huge? This is a well-known and well-understood illusion. Basically, when it's high up in the sky, we don't really have anything to compare it to. But when it's low down, we can compare it with like distant trees. And those trees look tiny compared to it. So it just looks bigger. Black holes eventually rupture after absorbing everything in this explosion inside the black hole. That's not really a thing. Do you think handheld energy weapons like phasers are possible? I guess they're like in principle possible. The Milky Way is moving. Does that mean that we're currently experiencing some time dilation relative to some other system? Yeah, absolutely. So gravity travels at the speed of light. Gravitational waves do. Yeah. What's my educational background? I did my undergrad in 4 years. I did a double major, and then I did a master's and PhD program over the course of 7 years in physics. What are your thoughts on magnetohydrodynamics? It's hard, and I'm afraid of it. Those are my opinions. Can light move objects? Yeah, actually. Sort of. I mean, so, okay, yes, definitely. But not like the levitating kind of way. That's a little bit more sort of. But you can use, there are things called light sails, where if you have like the sun hitting like a super reflective thin piece of material, that super reflective thin piece of material will eventually get pushed away, which is really cool. How can something be a wave and particle simultaneously? It's not, it's a wave. It's always a wave, always. But it's not the light that's moving things. It absolutely is. Light pressure is a real thing. It applies a force to things. If light is weightless, then why does it bend near a black hole? Because whether things are weightless or not doesn't affect whether it's affected by gravity. From Elijah with the $5 again. I never really understood how light can act as both a particle and a wave. Oh, I think I answered that. But it's not. It's a wave. It's always a wave. It's just sometimes the wave is more localized. You can think of it as like, you can think of photons as like wave packets, right? And C-bar again with the 250 joules. Thank you. I don't know why joules are all of a sudden popping off, but I appreciate it. What's the weight of a photon? Photons are massless, so in some sense they don't have weight. Do you think coincidences is currently explained, or is coincidences are expected to happen and they don't really need a deeper reason? What's your opinion on multiple universes? I'm agnostic about it. As far as I can tell, there's not really good evidence that they exist. Was that thing in the Oppenheimer movie about a possibility of scorching the atmosphere real? It was a thing that they were really concerned about, but it wasn't something that they should have been concerned about. They have momentum. They do have momentum. That doesn't mean they have mass, though. Momentum being mass times velocity is only a thing at very low speeds. Momentum is not the same thing as... momentum is not equal to mv at higher speeds. What's your view on 3i Atlas? It's a comet. From Dimmy Fiend with the $10, random question. Is there an ongoing hypothesis that space-time is a superfluid? Not that I've heard of. I know that that was in the Big Bang Theory. I don't think it's a thing that anybody's taking seriously. How do you feel about black hole stars to explain some of the supermassive black holes we see today? I think it's plausible, although perhaps supermassive stars that just undergo direct collapse might be more likely. Is the friction force part of it happening because Newton's third law? I don't understand the question. Have you ever cured anyone? I'm not a medical doctor. If nothing can escape a black hole, how did everything escape the Big Bang singularity? Well, A, the Big Bang likely was not a singularity. B, the Big Bang was not a black hole. Can a wave be stopped, and if so, can you freeze light? So you can slow down waves by changing the medium that the wave is traveling through, absolutely. Perhaps so much that it like appears that as if they're stopped. But waves kind of in principle can't really be stopped. Otherwise it's not a wave. If it's always a wave, then how do you explain the photoelectric effect? That they're wave packets. Photons are wave packets. They're the smallest possible wave packet of an electromagnetic wave, or of the electromagnetic field, rather. What are your qualifications? I have a PhD in physics. I spent 3 years in Europe as a researcher doing physics and mathematics at a university, or 2.5 years, I guess. What do you think about Musk's neurochip implants? Look, if they work, they work. That'd be really cool. I'm not holding my breath, though. The Big Bang happened here. Can it happen somewhere else? The Big Bang happened everywhere, not just here. At least that's the general idea. Do we have any idea of the volume diameter of a black hole versus its mass, if that even exists? Well, so we talk about a black hole's size being the size enclosed by the event horizon. Dimmy Fiend just sent 5 gift memberships, and that's huge. That's huge because now 5 people can go access my debate notes. So if you wanted, and you're a member now and you just got a gift of a membership, you can go access my debate notes. It's a Google Doc. It has all of my debate notes for all of the different topics that I do, including sources, including arguments, etc. So congrats. Best way to debunk a flat earther with a single irrefutable argument. Ask them to explain why, well, okay, I mean, it's not an argument, it's more of a question. I guess the argument would be that they don't have an explanation for this. Why a sun goes down rather than just getting further away. Sam Green, I'm glad that you appreciate me and for correcting these scientists. I appreciate you too. And Dimmy Fiend also just joined, welcome. Here's your monthly salary as a physicist. Oof. That's like 179 rupees, which I think is, it's like $2. Big oof. True though. You don't go into physics for the money. I don't know what a popular vote is, but thank you. Bro, then why do we say that there's a wave particle duality? Because the language is outdated. It's all waves. You might want to call them wavicles because they're like particle-like waves, but it's all waves. The mathematics that we use to describe all of quantum field theory, it's always waves. Any superconductor news? Not that I've heard of. Are you the best TikTok physics? I don't know. Dimmy sent another 5 gifted memberships. Welcome 5 more to the... I need a name, y'all. I need a name. Like is it the... It's gotta be like a Blitz something, right? Or like the... I don't know. There's got to be a name. We'll come up with something. We'll come up with something. Grain sent $10. Thank you so much, Grain. Can you comment on the universe being in a black hole, and if you add up all of the matter of the universe and do the Schwarzschild radius calculation, you get a size larger than the black hole? So look, so I don't think that the universe is in a black hole. What is true is that back in the 70s, if you assumed that the universe was expanding and then was going to contract, the maximum size that it would ever get to, would match with the Schwarzschild radius of the black hole, given all of the matter in the universe. However, in order for a black hole to form, you have to have a whole bunch of matter within the Schwarzschild radius and then not matter outside of the Schwarzschild radius. Like there has to be basically like empty space outside so that it can gravitationally collapse. If you just had uniform matter, then if it was dense enough, it would be you would have a certain amount of mass within a Schwarzschild radius, but it would never collapse because it would be uniform. Now, there is something to be said that almost certainly, I don't think that we're in a black hole, because at least we're not in a rotating black hole, because rotating black holes don't impart rotation on the stuff inside of them, it turns out. So there's something to be said there. But yeah, I don't find it very compelling. Dimmy Fiend sent another 5 gifted memberships. So yeah, we'll need some names. Neck2 says Blitzizins. That's too hard to say, to be honest. That's really hard to say. For a black hole, the difference in density matters. You want, yeah, sharp high density next to low. That's exactly it. Yep. How is time travel possible when something has not even occurred? It's occurred in the future. It has occurred, it's just in the future. Seabar, thank you for the 250 joules again. Blitzens might. Maybe. Blitz buds. I actually kind of like Blitz buds, but it also seems really like narcissistic. I don't know. If my twin separates... Okay, hold on. If my twin travels at 99.9% the speed of light, why is he the one that ages slower if I'm also traveling at 99.9% speed of light relative to him? So from his perspective, you will age slower. But the moment he turns around to come back, he will basically see you age super rapidly. So it's the acceleration that actually breaks the symmetry. Oops. Physics gremlins. I like that one too. I'm an amateur, but from my understanding, it is space-time itself that is expanding. The speed of light is the limit on travel through space-time, not on the rate at which space-time expands. Yeah, that's exactly it. What's a positron? How is it different from a proton and an electron? So a positron is an antimatter version of an electron. And so it has all of the same features of the electron, except it has positive charge instead of negative charge. So it has the same mass of the electron, has the same spin of the electron, all of the same features. So it's not at all like a proton, except that it has a positive charge. A Duke of Shasta sends $2 European dollars. European dollar, they're not dollars, they're euros. Sounds like Blitz butts. No, we don't want that. Maybe I'll make like a poll and I'll post it in the Discord or something like this. So then we can get some opinions. So make sure to join the Discord server if you're 18 plus, by the way. Like, okay, Justin with the Kraken crew, it's just a really good name. Like, it has nothing to do with Deconstruction Zone. It's just because he likes I think a wine or a liquor called Kraken. But it's just really good. Like, it's a really good name. And it's not narcissistic at all, right? Like, right, anyway, why do electrons have spin? So spin, unfortunately, spin is a fundamental property of things, kind of like mass. And so the trouble is that there isn't really a deeper explanation, except that there is a way. So mass, you can kind of think of mass is to motion, is to translation, as spin is to rotation. And so just like how particles can have mass just intrinsically, particles can have angular momentum just intrinsically, and that's what spin is. YouTube's getting better. It only took them 45 minutes to tell me Blitz is live. Yeah, it's fair. Is energy still conserved? In local systems, yeah. I know Kraken is a giant squid. I know that too. Oh, hey, it's Jellybean. Your video popped off, Jellybean. That was crazy. It has like 2 million views now or something, right? What was your PhD work on? So my PhD was on a type of geometry called conformal geometry, which has some nice applications to something called the ADS-CFT correspondence. Are there pixels in reality? We really don't know, although there seemed to be like a functional pixels of reality, meaning that if you tried to measure something smaller than this smallest pixel size, then that smallest size would just collapse into a black hole and you couldn't get any data out from something smaller than that. The largest known planet in the universe is the exoplanet ROXS 42BB, and it has a radius that is about 1.12 times that of Jupiter, while its exact diameter isn't known precisely. Is that true? Oh, I've never heard of this, so I don't know. Do you think spin is affected by electromagnetic waves, no matter the frequency? I mean, in some sense, yeah, but only if the thing has charge. Rotating black holes don't impart their spin to contents. What is there besides their contents? Right, yeah, so if you are inside of a rotating black hole, you will not yourself you will not start swirling around. That's not what happens. I've looked into this myself. I've done the calculations. It's just not the case that this happens. That is, at least that's true under general relativity. If you assume some other model of gravity, like Einstein-Cartan theory, then you can, then the rotation of the black hole can impart it on the stuff inside. Glizzy gang goes hard. Why does time only move forward? Go watch my video on it. It's tricky. Theoretical physics or astrophysics. So those are not two distinct things. Theoretical physicists there are theoretical astrophysicists. There are also physicists who are not astrophysicists or theoretical physicists. I'm a mathematical physicist. That's the word that I typically use. Scroll down to the bottom. Are your thoughts on global warming and our year forecast. I don't know what the question means. If I got punched at the speed of light, would I be okay? No. If the universe is really infinite, will we ever know it for sure? Maybe. It depends. It really depends on the way that we eventually end up understanding the universe as a whole. Like, maybe that's something that's in principle possible. Is math related to quantum physics just a model? I've heard physicists insist it's real. What does that mean? So that's up to interpretation, right? At the end of the day, physics is about, you have a model. The model makes predictions about. So yeah, there's kind of two things here. So you can have a model that has inputs and outputs. The inputs are, variables. The outputs are measurement results, basically. And the model is a set of mathematics that relates the inputs to the outputs. Now, you can then go a little bit deeper and ask the machinery inside that relates the inputs to the outputs, what does that correspond to physically? Some people will say it's just a model, that we don't actually know what it relates to. These would be called instrumentalists. Some people say that actually the mathematics that we're doing actually tells us something about what's going on physically that relates the inputs to the outputs. Those would be called, I don't know if there's a name for those kinds of people. I know that there is, I just can't think of it. Anyway, that's kind of not something that we can really experimentally verify at this point. Dimmy Fiend again sent 5 more gifted memberships, which is enormous. Thank you so much. That's like 20 that you've sent. That's huge, which means that 20 more people now have access to the debate notes, which is great. How strong is gravity for the planet not to throw us off while spinning? Oh, the centrifugal force that the Earth's rotation, even at the equator where it's spinning fast enough, the centrifugal force is like less than 1% of the strength of gravity pulling us down. It's just really not spinning very quickly. Does time travel into past mean we are seeing things from past or physically in it? You would be physically in it, right? If you could time travel to the past. I don't think you can, though. Is it accurate to think that a singularity could be considered a single element with an atomic number equal to the number of particles inside? No, singularities couldn't be atoms, right? Why can't you measure anything smaller than a Planck length? Well, if you were to try to, so at least naively, using your naive understanding of quantum gravity, which again is not complete, so take this all with a grain of salt. Using our naive understanding of quantum gravity, if you were to try to measure something smaller than the Planck length, it would require so much energy that you would produce a black hole there instead. And so it would obscure whatever you were trying to look at. That's roughly the explanation. Hi from Geneva, thoughts on the future 100-kilometer long collider? It'd be cool. I don't think that it's that expensive in the grand scheme of things. Was Einstein a real person or just a theoretical physicist? That's a good joke. If you have 2 entangled particles interacting across the universe, how does that not violate information traveling faster than the speed of light? Well, they're not interacting. That's the point. Entangled particles don't interact with each other. They're correlated. That's it. I'm gonna have my final physics exam for high school after tomorrow. What should I do? You should study. Explain connection differences between tensor from linear algebra and tensor in theoretical electrodynamics. Oh, they're very closely related. I mean, the way that so if you take a tensor from linear algebra and then you just make it a tensor that is, you make your tensors built from the tensor product of, say, vector spaces that preserve a metric, like 3-dimensional space or 4-dimensional space-time or something like this, and you just take the tensor product of all of those vector spaces. Then you get some geometric object that doesn't care about what coordinates you use to describe the thing. And that's exactly what they are in electrodynamics and physics. That's how they're used. Can 2 entangled particles exist in 2 different times? I think I've read that actually is the case, but I don't really understand it. So I'd have to think about it some more. Thoughts on simulation theory and hologram theory? They're unrelated. The simulation theory is basically debunked. It's like a shower thought, not really like a serious idea. The hologram theory, it relies on the holographic principle, which is taken pretty seriously. It doesn't mean that we're a hologram. It just means that there's a mathematical way to describe us that is equivalent and lower dimensional. Michael Solis sends $5. Thank you so much. Been watching for a while now. Was wondering if speaking to some of these people you debate worries you. These are functioning people in society. It does, but I think it also brings me down to earth because look, I'm surrounded by people who have PhDs all the time. Like those are the people that I interact with outside of TikTok. The people I interact with most are either my friends who I just play games with, who are just normal people, and then coworkers who have PhDs. And this is like a tiny, tiny fraction of the population. And so, it grounds me to know that not everybody's like that. What's the average airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? African or European? I'll subscribe due to your voice. It's sleep-worthy. Thank you for being on a live. I greatly appreciate this. Of course, you're welcome, I guess. Does God play dice? I don't think God is real, so I would say no. When people say false vacuum decay could end the universe, what does this mean? And is it a realistic concern or just theoretical? So given the data we have, false vacuum decay is something that is like 50-50. Like we're not sure if it's possible. We're like right on the brink. Like you can basically like plot a chart of like the mass of the Higgs boson and the mass of the top quark. And if those two values fall in a certain region of that chart, then vacuum decay is a real thing. If they fall in a different region, the vacuum decay is not a real thing. And we're like right on the line. So we're actually just not sure. That's the thing. If it were possible though, that doesn't mean that it's like something that you have to be worried about, because even if it happened, unless it happens within the observable universe, it will never get to us because the universe is expanding fast enough. Can you explain how LLMs work? Magic? Oh, sorry. If you measured the energy in every atom of the universe, could you predict anything that will happen? No. At least not with, not in a deterministic way, in like a deterministically classical way. You could predict everything that happens in a quantum way, absolutely. Which one is correct? Centripetal force or centrifugal force? There's centripetal acceleration. Centripetal means center seeking. So the acceleration, so when some particle or some object or a ball or whatever is moving in a circle, it has an acceleration that is pointing towards the center. So it has centripetal acceleration. Now, from that particle or that object or that ball's perspective, there is a force that it experiences, which is centrifugal. That pushes it out. How can I become an astrophysicist? Go to college, get a degree, go to grad school, get another degree. Another 2 degrees, maybe even. Thoughts on gravitational collapse model for quantum mechanics? I'm not convinced because gravity is so weak, but maybe. Oh. Why doesn't quantum mechanics break causality? Because there's no information transfer happening. What is momentum space Hamiltonian for graphene? I have no idea. I don't know anything about graphene, really. Can beta decay happen with antimatter? Yeah, I guess in principle. We haven't made antimatter atoms that are big enough for beta decay to be a thing. Given that social media is one of your jobs, aren't we technically your coworkers? No, you are my customers in some sense, right? But that feels weird, so I don't like to think about it that way. Is dark matter a tangible thing like antimatter? It could be. If dark matter is a particle, or if it's black holes, then yeah. It might not be tangible in the sense that you can't touch it, because if you could touch it, then we could see it. But it might be like a physical thing, yeah. What about the gravity of awareness? I don't know what that means. Are there gravitational lensing type effects for gravitational waves? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can gravitationally lens gravitational waves. The thing is we are so bad at detecting gravitational waves that as far as I know, we haven't detected gravitational lens to gravitational waves yet. But absolutely, we expect them to exist. How many electrons fit in the 1p subshell? So 1p means that, wait a minute, there isn't a 1p subshell, right? There's one s. And then there's 2s and 2p. I think that's true. I can never remember the names of these things. He tried to trick me. How How do particles know they're being observed? They don't. They merely interact with things, and when they interact with things, they behave differently. Why do the days become so gray and dull as life goes on? Oh, I don't know. What is masers? A maser is a microwave laser. It's the M in maser stands for microwave, and then the rest is laser. Dr. Blitz, huge fan. I love your work. I have to ask, what's the chance Big Bang is the wrong theory? Oh, I mean, like, I don't know, small. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't bet on it being wrong. What's your research? I felt that pure theoretical research is uneventful and dropped out, but I would like to work on real problems. So I do pure theoretical stuff. Some of the stuff I do is just purely mathematical. It's not even physics. So like I kind of like straddle the line between math and physics. The physics of water. What about it? Is this your full-time job? No, I would say it's a part-time job. I spend about, depending on the day, somewhere between 3 and 5 hours in the morning up until around noon doing social media, YouTube, streaming on YouTube, streaming on TikTok, making videos, like educational videos, etc. And then the other half of the day, like the afternoon, I spend working on various research projects that I have going on, collaborating with colleagues and things like this. Can you explain category theory? Hell no. That shit's hard. I tried to teach myself it. It's hard. I never got around to it. How long before we have cold fusion? Almost certainly we never will. Cold fusion seems like it's physically impossible unless it's muon induced. Muon induced or muon catalyzed cold fusion is a thing, but that's not really particularly efficient. What is phantom energy? Phantom energy is a proposed way of understanding, or a proposed model for dark energy, which would be basically dark energy. It's what we would call dark energy if its strength was increasing. After all these knowledge and studying the fundamental laws of nature, do you believe in God, or maybe something made it all this way? God here doesn't mean the typical one, just higher being. No, I don't believe in a God. What's your favorite physics party trick? I don't think I have one. Does quantum entangled communication work? No. Well, not really. You can't communicate directly with entanglement. You can encrypt things using entanglement, though. That's the thing. Terrifying physics fact the general public doesn't know. I don't know if this is more space than physics, but if a gamma ray burst was pointed at us, we would have like 12 hours of notice maybe, and then like the entire Earth's surface would be, if it was close enough, the entire Earth's surface would be sterilized. So that would be bad. Do experimental physicists really dislike theoretical physicists? No. What do you mean encrypt things using entanglement? So you can basically use, so quantum entanglement basically, because there's no transmission of information between two entangled particles, there's just a correlation. You can basically send a message and say, send a message and then use quantum entangled particles, the outcomes of measurements of quantum entangled particles, you'll both get the same answer, basically. And so if you both get the same answer, then you can use that sort of as a key to undo the entanglement. Sorry, to undo the encryption. Is any chance we'd figure out 0-point energy in the next 1,000 years? We kind of know what the deal is with 0-point energy. It's just kind of by definition not useful. Would it all be sterilized for just one side? No, the gamma rays would pass through the Earth, and the whole thing would be sterilized. The atmosphere would be stripped, like it would all be gone. Actually, I don't know if the gamma rays would pass through the Earth, but yeah, the Earth would be completely destroyed. Not vaporized, perhaps, but... can quantum entanglement replace radio fiber optics for data transmission? You can't transmit information using quantum entanglement, no. How does the universe expand? How does something infinite get bigger? It's not that its edges are getting further away. It's that the individual chunks of space are taking up more space. Thoughts on the Big Crunch, Big Bang, Big Crunch? I understand the effect. I want to understand the formulas for effects we observe someday, but ADHD and math is a tragic combination. ADHD and math doesn't have to be a tragic combination. You're looking at one. But Big Bang, Big Crunch is still pretty fringe, right? It's perhaps on the table now. because we don't know what's happening with dark energy. But it's still pretty fringe. There are like a few models that work with it. Like I recently published a paper. Well, it's in peer review still, but I recently submitted a paper. It's, you know, on the preprint server, kind of describing one way that this could be realized. It's not like one individual model though. It's like a whole family of models basically. Any idea what 3i Atlas is? Yes, it's a comet. How would we have 12 hours notice? Are gamma rays slower than light? No, so the thing is that depending on what causes the gamma ray bursts. So supernovas, if supernovas are one kind of cause of gamma ray burst, or like some sort of neutron star thing, neutrino emissions tend to get to us, depending on how close it is. Neutrino emissions tend to get to us, or can get to us sooner, because the neutrino emissions aren't really slowed down by like the medium of like the star that they're trying to get out from. So the neutrinos will just go from the core of the star exploding straight to us, and they travel at nearly the speed of light. Whereas the gamma rays will take some time to pass through the star, basically. What gas is burning on the sun? The sun is not burning. The sun is just basically a hot ball of gas, and the source of the heat comes from nuclear fusion happening at the core of the star. How are we able to tell the universe is 93 billion light years if it hasn't had that much time to traverse? So the point is that the universe, the stuff that we're seeing now, is 46 and a half, the furthest stuff that we're seeing now is 46.5 billion light years away or so. Now, that doesn't mean that we will ever be able to see the light that stuff is emitting. If that stuff is emitting some light now, that light might never get to us. But we are seeing light from where it used to be. That stuff is now much further. And the reason why it's able to be that big is because the speed of light says nothing about the rate at which the universe can expand. I have to scroll down a lot. What was your favorite math class / subject? So I took a general relativity course as an undergrad where I learned differential geometry. That was really cool, but that's technically not a math class. Probably my favorite math class was my Galois theory class, either that or my number theory class. That was really fun. I loved both of those, but that's because I had a really, really good professor. Like, he was a delight. Do you think AI will become sentient? Yeah, it could be. What's the most plausible explanation for the Great Attractor? Oh, just a whole bunch of galaxies that are on the other side of our galaxy. So like the Great Attractor, the thing is like we can look up from our galaxy, we can look down from our galaxy, but if you try to look across through the galaxy, there's just a whole bunch of stuff in the way, so we can't see through it. And the Great Attractor is on the other side of the stuff that we can't see through, so it's probably just a bunch of galaxies that we can't see. Do you think we exist? Because I think we are short. Yes, I think that we exist. I think I exist at least. Why can't black holes absorb their own Hawking radiation? If light travels directly outward from just beyond the event horizon, then it'll escape. Is it viable to go to grad school for physics with an undergrad in math? Yeah, it's possible, but you'll have some catching up to do. Is the field of work of science men dominated? Unfortunately, depending on the field, yes. It'd be great if it was more equitable, if you know, there was less of a stigma against women in STEM. I'm on the fence between aerospace engineering and physics. Which should I go for? Do you want money or do you want fun? Because the answers are different depending. I need to hydrate. Why can't we see past the surface of glass scattering? So in order for us to see something, light would have to have gotten from the thing emitting the light to our eyeballs unimpeded. However, prior to 380,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe was opaque. So any light that was emitted by anything got bounced around all over the place. And so it just wouldn't have had a free path to get to our eyeball. So eventually, when the arm we are in eventually goes to the other side of the great attractor, if humans still exist by then, we will see it. Yeah, plausibly, yeah. By the way, quick reminder. Some of you guys like to watch me for the debates. If you like that, and you become a member on either YouTube channel, or you become a Patreon patron at any level, you can get access to my debate notes. So I'm advertising this because this is a thing that's not well known. If you want access to my debate notes, which has arguments, counter arguments, sources, facts, you know, papers, all of these things in it for all of the topics I do, that's the way to do it. Does this degree lead to good jobs, or is it like other degrees that are useless for a good job? It depends on what kind of job you want. If you want a job being a physicist, then you'll need a physics degree. Does time really pass more slowly in stronger gravitational fields? Yes, it does. How do we access the notes? Once you become a member, you will get a link. It will, on Patreon, the link is just available under posts, and on YouTube, the link will be available under perks once you become a member. Can you explain when we're getting GTA 6? I cannot. Likely never is my guess. Hey, question about particle physics. How does low energy non-perturbative QCD give rise to the formation of complex nuclei? Nobody knows. It's non-perturbative. I mean, there's some ideas, but like this is not something that we have a strong theoretical grounding for. It's all very kind of ad hoc-ish. Opinions on the red giant galaxies discovered by JWST. Are you talking about the little red dots, the LRDs? I'm convinced that physicists don't care about money and just do it for the love of the game. Well, yeah. Physicists don't get paid super well. Like, imagine having like a postdoc, which is a degree that you get, or which is a job that you get, it's a temporary job that you get after you have a PhD in physics, will pay like 60K depending on where you are, which is middle class. But like for the level of education, you could get something that pays 5 times as much. Like you won't, like if you get a job in physics, you won't be broke. But you know, it's just like the level of education is not commensurate with the level of salary. Is 60K middle class? Yeah, I think so. It might be somewhere, yeah, like it depends on where you live, right? What's heavier, a kilogram of steel or a kilogram of feathers? They have the same mass. But technically, as long as the feathers are not, you know, compressed, the kilogram of steel will weigh a little bit more because some of the feathers are higher up in the gravitational field, so the gravitational field is weaker on them. Why do heavier things not fall faster, but the more helium added, the less fast an object falls? So the thing is heavier things, in some sense, do fall faster. Or let me rephrase, it's denser things that fall faster, because denser things are going to have a less significant contribution of drag to the actual, to their acceleration. So everything experiences the same gravitational force downwards. However, as a result of, well, there's a buoyant force that's involved, and there's also like aerodynamic drag. Things that are denser will, they have less surface area for their mass, so the drag force will be smaller. And things that are denser will also experience less buoyant force upwards from the air around them. So you can add helium, and that effectively makes the thing less dense, which increases the relative buoyant force and increases the relative drag force. Oh, advice for a math major. I actually wanted to do physics, but wasn't good enough at the theory. Well, if you're doing a math major, then you should be plenty good at theory. I mean, I don't know any specific advice for a math major. Like, go to office hours if you're confused. Opinion on loop quantum gravity. I don't know enough about it to have a well-informed opinion. Oh, did I miss one? So Duke of Shostka sends €5. We don't know. Better find out before assigning homework to people. Science is so shallow. That guy, I swear. Don't do that. Don't do that. Thoughts on pantheism? I don't buy it. Is there a point where adding more dimensions stops helping us understand reality and is just art? I wouldn't call it art. I'd call it mathematics. Do you find physicists think non-creatively? Do they seem to be more rigid individuals? No, physicists are very creative. That's the hard part. Did you get your degree from a math or physics program? I'm in a math PhD program. So my undergrad degree, I got a physics degree and a math degree. My PhD was in a physics program, but my advisor was a mathematician. So I'm kind of straddling the line there. Any tips for my first uni general physics class? Go to office hours and don't get behind, because if you get behind, you'll be stuck catching up and you won't be able to pay attention to the actual content of lectures. How many spiritual physicists have you encountered? 1. And I haven't encountered them in real life. Are there any interesting phenomena that are the result of physodrag? Not that I'm familiar with, but physodrag is kind of neat. It's like a neat thing. Where do you see the cleanest bridge between pure math and physical intuition? Oh, well, okay, for me, it's space-time curvature. Space-time curvature is like differential geometry is like pure math, right? Like it's just like it was come up with by a mathematician, by like Riemann, and Gauss kind of started it a little bit. But there is a way that you can understand space-time curvature to relate it to the trajectory of particles moving through space-time, which is really cool. Every physics department should have some disheveled mystic hanging around just in case he says something that'll inspire a good idea. Maybe that'd be a good idea. Mamma mia. We assume dark matter, dark energy exists because according to what we found previously, it wouldn't make sense without it. Could it be that all before was wrong and we made it up to make sense? Yeah, sure. Except we don't have any better explanations. And all of the other theories, like the general relativity that we have, makes really, really good predictions in places where we wouldn't expect dark matter and dark energy to be relevant to begin with. If energy is conserved, why is it that an expanding universe causes light waves to get longer? Energy is not conserved in an expanding universe. It's just not, that energy just disappears. Does it seem that all physical constants are independent, or is it likely possible that they are dependent on a single constant? What would this mean if it were the case? I think that we can't rule out that they all depend on a single constant, or perhaps that they all depend on 0 constants at all. I don't think that we can rule that out yet. We don't have any evidence either way. Is age more related to the expansion of the universe or to slow cells? What? The universe is inherently mathematical. Is the universe inherently mathematical, or are we just good at interpreting patterns? I think it's probably the latter. How can energy be not created nor destroyed? Where did it come from? Energy conservation doesn't apply in an expanding universe. Thoughts on quantum gravity? I have a few videos on it from a while ago. I'm not so convinced, but it's neat. It's a neat idea. Do you believe in the simulation? No. How did the Big Bang create space-time? It didn't. Heard that space-time itself, space-time itself be a shape like a donut. What's the difference between this type of space-time curvature and gravitational space-time curvature? So what you're talking about is the curvature of space. And what you're talking about is more specifically topology. So you could have a flat donut, meaning that there's no spatial curvature, even though it loops on itself. Kind of like, think of like Pac-Man's universe, right? Pac-Man's universe, you go out one side, you come in the other side, you go out the top, you come in the bottom. There's no curvature there, it's still flat. You can have a 3-dimensional flat, meaning that there's no space-time curvature, and still have some sort of kind of pattern like that. Or you could have genuine spatial curvature in the same way that the surface of the Earth is a 2-dimensional sphere that's curved. You could have a 3-dimensional sphere that's curved, and that could be the case as well. That's basically the shape that space takes when there's no matter present. When you add matter, it adds some distortions to that shape. Will string theory ever be proven, since the energy needed for direct evidence is enormous? Who knows? Hard to say. Oh. Sorry. Woke up early today. Do scientists study philosophy of science? Rarely. Is existence those 2 donuts spiraling into each other? What 2 donuts? Sorry, I made you all yawn. If time is just another dimension, why do we experience it so differently from space? Well, it is another dimension. It's just a different kind of dimension than space is. So there's a technical way of describing this distinction mathematically, and it's called the signature of a dimension. So in there's kind of two different signatures, or I guess there's three different signatures. You can have a positive signature, a negative signature, or a zero signature. Space and time have the opposite signatures. So if you choose, and at that point it's just a convention, most people work with positive signature for space, and that means that time has a negative signature. How much of consciousness is still a mystery? $2 from J Money. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. I don't study that. That's like for neuroscientists. But I appreciate the $2 regardless. If you could pick two for your panel, Sean Carroll, Neil Tyson, Brian Greene, Brian Cox, Michio Kaku. Maybe Sean Carroll and Brian Greene. Is string theory technically a hypothesis since it doesn't have direct evidence? Look, mathematicians and theoretical physicists use the word theory differently than science communicators do. Science communicators use the word theory to indicate like a mathematical model that has made really, really good predictions that have been verified experimentally. Mathematicians use theory to just describe some mathematical framework. Theoretical physicists use the word theory to describe like a theoretical framework that is purported to explain some phenomenon. A dolphin mystery, I don't know what that is, but thank you, Jack. Dolphin symphony, I should say. So string theory is a theory in the sense that mathematicians and theoretical physicists mean, not in the sense that science communicators mean. What's your favorite unit? Mine is the smoot. It's like 5'7". Is string theory wavelengths? No. Could the Boots void, I think it's pronounced Boots void, and other like a hole in the donut of the curvature of space? No, the Boots void isn't empty. It's just like there's less galaxies there than elsewhere. Are you familiar with Sean Carroll's recent endeavor with merging philosophy and physics, and what are your thoughts about merging philosophy and physics? Not only am I familiar with it, I'm actually applying to work with him this, he's hiring a postdoc this year, and I'm applying to take that job because that'd be really interesting. I'd love to do that kind of stuff. So if anybody knows Sean Carroll personally, why is there so much more matter than antimatter in the universe? Early conditions should have created equal amounts, but matter dominates today. This is one of the biggest questions. And in fact, if you go watch my video on the 5 biggest mysteries that keep me up at night in physics, that's one of them. I put that as number 3 because that's a really, really weird question that we don't know the answer to. Is Juan Maldacena considered best string theorist alive? No, probably Straubinger might be, but Juan Maldacena is definitely up there. Does energy depend on time? Kind of indirectly, yeah. Will the unapologetic trio ever go on tour? Maybe if we get big enough. What are your thoughts about James Clerk Maxwell? Brilliant. Maybe one of the first mathematical physicists. How do we see the beginning of the universe? Well, light takes time to travel. Some light has been traveling to us since the very, very, very early days of the universe. Not quite the beginning, but very, very early days. And we can see that because it's been traveling the whole time. Given infinite time, wouldn't atoms eventually reconfigure to create your first person experience? Sure, as long as that's a possibility, then sure. Yeah. As there is less antimatter in the universe, could antimatter theoretically decay into dark matter energy, leading to the imbalance? No, because we would know about that. We would have detected that by now. Why can't we control gravity? We can. Just move things around. You're producing gravitational waves. What's the difference between a nuclear physicist and a nuclear chemist? How would that work? I have no idea. I don't know what a nuclear chemist does. Favorite or most memorable lab course? We did the photoelectric effect, and we did thermionic emission in my advanced lab course as an undergrad, and that was really cool. Mr. McTime, thank you for the $2. Just sent $2. Really nice guy. Do you have a preference regarding cyclical universe hypotheses? I mean, I wrote a paper with my own model in it, but not really. I'm pretty agnostic on it. How is it that the edge of the observable universe is so much further away than the edge of the universe? Oh, because space-time isn't constrained to... Sorry, space isn't constrained to travel at a certain speed. Can magnetic fields influence gravitational forces even a small amount? Well, yeah, so there's energy stored in a magnetic field. That energy can warp the... can bend space-time. Oh. Opinions on epsilon delta definition of the limit? I think it's fine. I think Cauchy invented that, right? Does infinite universes mean everything that can happen has happened an infinite number of times? In principle, I would guess, yeah. Do you believe the antimatter asymmetry problem is the cause of a higher being? No. Oh, there's like residual radiation from the beginning of the universe? Yeah, it's called the cosmic microwave background radiation. Atlas, with the $5, says, how do you reconcile Einstein's theory of general relativity with quantum mechanics? You know, look, I appreciate that people send me these questions. Absolutely appreciate it, especially because they support me this way. But if you're going to send a question, make sure it's a question that physicists haven't been struggling to answer for the last 100 years. Because, like, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't be here. I would be winning the Nobel Prize as we speak, right? They would invent a new Nobel Prize just to give me for solving that problem. So, like, I don't know the answer to that. I could speculate, but I don't know. So, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to your question. I feel like I've let you down. Will experimental physics reach an inevitable plateau, and is string theory potentially that plateau? Yeah, it could be. What's your speculation? That I don't think that string theory is right. I also don't think that loop quantum gravity is right. The Nobel Prize is fair, or is more of a popularity contest? Generally, the physics Nobel Prize has been pretty highly regarded. There have been a few mishaps in the last 100 years or so, but most of the time they've been generally regarded as like pretty reasonable. I don't know about all the other prizes. What do you think is right? I don't think that we have the right idea yet. What is behind space? I have no idea what that question means. Space isn't like a screen that has something behind it. What's the most compelling argument you've heard for mathematical Platonism? Probably the indispensability argument that, like, well, you can't even really do science without mathematics. And so any ontology should minimally have the things that are indispensable to, or any theory should minimally include in its ontology the things that are indispensable for that theory to work. That's a fairly good argument, but it's just like an intuition pump. I don't know why we should accept that that's true. What is anti-space black matter? Neither of those are things that are used in the physics literature. However, you're probably talking about dark matter. Dark matter is likely just a type of particle that we can't detect, at least not directly. And Nathaniel asks, I asked you too much not to give back. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the $2, Nathaniel. Dig Pezzy, $2. Thank you. Opinion on free will. Do you believe you have free will? No. But I also believe that I don't have a choice in acting as if I do have free will. And then Atlas sends $2. What would happen if you travel faster than light? I can't answer that question using physics, because physics says that you can't do that. It's not really a thing that makes sense. At least you can't get to move faster than light. And so at that point, it kind of just depends on which model you're speculating about. $5 from Fear's Interaction. I have a theory that the universe was created by cosmic philosophers to see if a primate could write Shakespeare. Which Nobel should I apply for? Literature, I think. Could fractals be the key to unified theory? I don't think so, no. How does one donate to ask a question? It has to be through YouTube. In principle, you can also send a Cash App, and I will see a message there as well, or buy me a coffee. But those don't pop up on my screen, so I have to check my phone. And do you tend to have a research passion project on top of your funded research? My funded research is whatever I want to do. I'm currently self-funded, so I can do whatever I want. There's something that kind of started at the end of my PhD that I've been kind of driving at for a long time. And it's sort of a goal of mine that I want to kind of complete the story there. And I recently wrote a paper that sort of so I recently wrote 2 papers. One just popped up in the archive today, actually, and another popped up in the archive about a month ago, that almost finished the story. I think that there's 2 more components left of the story that I need to resolve. And then the whole thing will be done, and I'll probably write a big, long review of the whole story. But yeah, that's probably it. Oof. What's the paper? I'm not telling you. It's for me and my colleagues. Not for people to know my real full name and where I live and all that stuff. Sorry. Do you think that we will be able to create a theory of quantum gravity? I hope so. I hope it's not like beyond human comprehension. Do you also work on pure math problems? Yeah, I do differential geometry. Yeah. What's the Cash App? It's in the link tree in my bio. Should be able to find. I think it's like at Blitz PhD or at Dr. Blitz PhD or something. Or $sign or whatever it is. What's more fundamental, symmetry or information? I tend to think symmetry, but maybe others would disagree. From Atlas with the $2, what do you believe AI can solve for physics soon? I don't know. Currently, it's not solving a whole lot. What if dark matter doesn't exist? Then we'll need an explanation for why it appears as if it does. What's the most promising branch for a theory of quantum gravity? I don't know if any of the branches that are being looked at right now are the ones that are promising. Like, the thing is we don't have any experimental data to go off of, so it's just really, really hard. Sorry, I just got some crazy news. Do you think AI will replace physicists with the dawn of AGI? No, I don't really think so. If the universe is expanding, what's it expanding into? It's not. The universe's expansion is not like the edges getting further away. It's like a given chunk of space is getting bigger. Are there any current hypotheses that you simply are not convinced of? Yeah, lots. I'm not convinced of heat death. I'm not convinced of there being a cosmological constant. I'm not convinced of string theory or of loop quantum gravity. There's a lot of things I'm not convinced. I'm generally very skeptical. Have you read Weinstein's geometric unity hypothesis? No, but somebody else did, and it's basically bunk. Is it like columns in a spreadsheet all getting wider? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Which living physicist has the most aura? Maybe Roger Penrose. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to... Yeah, Penrose is still alive. That's why I said the question was living physicists. Y'all, I think I'm gonna end the live here because I am like I really need to hydrate. I really need some coffee. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I have some prep to do for my interview, so hopefully that goes well. Maybe I'll be offered a job. Probably not, but who knows? So we'll see. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow for some more Ask a Physicist. Remember, if you want access to the debate notes, for all of my debates that I regularly update, make sure to become a member on either YouTube or on Patreon. All right, take care, everybody.